Hello, I'm Gordon Lane, editor of CameraLabs.com. I'd like to give you a brief video tour around the Panasonic Lumix DMC-FX35. Here it is, the FX35. It's the successor to the FX33, and it's also known as the FX36 in Asia, Australia and New Zealand. Now, externally speaking, the FX35 greatly resembles its predecessor, and in fact there's only a couple of small differences in the controls to tell them apart. But by sharing the same body, shape and design, you get yourself a very slim compact that will slip into almost any pocket. But of course the FX35 has several new features. Top of the list is the inevitable increase in resolution from 8.1 to 10.1 megapixels. Much more important though is a new 4x optically stabilised zoom lens. Now, the old FX33 had a decent 28 to 100mm coverage. That's a 3.6 times range, and you'd imagine that the 4 times range on this camera would just basically zoom in a little bit closer. But Panasonic's not done that. It still tops out at 100mm, which means it zooms out to a wider equivalent of 25mm. Now that gives this camera very wide angle coverage, unusually wide in fact for a compact camera. Remember, there's plenty of compacts still on the market that offer an equivalent of say 36 or even 38mm when zoomed down. Now, Panasonic's been doing a great job at fitting 28mm coverage to most of its compacts and other cameras, but now the FX35 trumps even them with its 25mm coverage, and we've got some examples of how you might use that coming up later on in the video. In addition to a wider angle lens and a couple of extra megapixels, the FX35 now boasts high-definition movie recording in the 720p format. It also features an improved version of Panasonic's already pretty capable intelligent auto mode that does a great job at trying to work out exactly what kind of picture you're trying to take. And we've got full details of exactly how all of these features work at the Camera Labs website, so if you're interested, head on over there and check them out. But now let's continue with the video tour and check out the FX35's controls. The FX35 may share the same body as its predecessor, but Panasonic's made some changes to the controls. Most obviously, the recessed mode dial here has been simplified to offer just 5 positions. That makes it more approachable for beginners, although you'll notice that the play option is now moved from this mode dial to a switch in the top right corner. Push it up to go into record mode and down to go into play. We're in play at the moment and you can see an image playing back on the 2.5-inch screen. To the right of the screen, the usual 4 direction buttons here, and in the bottom right corner, what used to be known as the function menu is now the Q menu. This still displays a superimposed menu on the screen though for adjusting popular options, and I'll show you a demonstration of that in just a moment. To the side of the body, you open a door to reveal the ports. At the bottom, a DC input. In the middle, a combined USB and TV output, and at the top, a new component video output. This is for use with an optional component video cable that allows this camera to do 1080i high-definition slideshows when connected to an HD TV. Finally, underneath the camera in a single compartment, you'll find the rechargeable lithium-ion battery, and of course the memory card slot, which as a Panasonic model is unsurprisingly the SD format. We're outside with the Panasonic FX35, so let's switch it on, see how long it takes to power up. Just over a second and you're ready for action. Now here we are with the camera fully zoomed out to a widest equivalent of 25mm, and now zoomed in to its maximum equivalent of 100mm, so that's a 4 times optical zoom range. Now even when you zoomed into 100mm, you might not notice much camera shake under bright conditions like these, but there is little shake nonetheless. And of course the FX35 features optical stabilisation. So to activate that, I'm going to go into the FX35's Q menu system, which overlays some options on the screen. And I'm going to switch the stabiliser to mode 1, and now let's see what difference that has made. As you can see, that is more stable than before. Now there wasn't a lot of shaking before, but of course this feature is still very useful when you're shooting under dimmer conditions. Now of course, like all compacts, you can overlay various graphics on the screen. If I press the display button here, we can overlay an alignment grid, which is also handy for applying the rule of thirds. Press it once more, the grid disappears and you're just left with the shooting information. Now it is possible to display a live histogram. To do that, you go into the main menu system, go into the setup menus, scroll down to the next page, and there you see histograms, and we can activate them there. and there you have your live histogram. This appears on this normal shooting page here and also with the grid here, but of course you can switch that off again if you prefer. Now, as before, you saw to adjust the stabilisation options we fired up the FX35's Q menu system, and that's also the way that you adjust some other popular settings. So if I press that Q button again, we can see from left to right options to adjust the stabilisation mode, the burst shooting, the autofocus mode, white balance, sensitivity, the new intelligent exposure mode, the resolution, and the LCD mode. And you'll see here that I've got it set to the A setting. That's for automatic, and what this will do is automatically increase the brightness of the screen when the ambient surroundings are also bright. We found that was actually very effective in practice, although you may wish to turn that feature off if you want to save some battery life. Now, one of the other new features on the FX35 is its high definition movie recording, and if I put it to the movie mode now, I'll just show you those settings. Again, if I bring up the Q menu, you'll see the actual resolution settings here. As you can see, that 30 frames per second 16:9 H setting is actually recording 720p high definition video at 30 frames a second. And if I put the camera into playback mode, I can actually show you a video that I recorded earlier. Now, unfortunately, you're not going to get to see the full quality of this on playback, but believe me, when you've got this connected to an HD TV, or when you're watching them played back on your computer, they do look pretty good. It's an impressive facility to have. While we're in playback mode, let's have a look at a still photo that we took earlier. Here it is, and if I press the display button, you can display some shooting information and also a histogram of the image there. And of course, it's possible to zoom in on those pictures and zoom out and show a series of thumbnails instead. The headline feature of the FX35 is arguably its 4x optical zoom lens with unusually wide angle capabilities. But just how wide is 25mm in practice? I'll show you. Here's a shot taken with a typical compact zoomed out to an equivalent of 36mm. This is what you'll get on a lot of models these days. Next up, one of Panasonic's own cameras with a widest equivalent of 28mm, and you can see it's capturing a much wider field of view. And finally, the FX35 with its widest angle equivalent of 25mm, and you can clearly see how it's capturing more than both the 28 and especially the 36mm versions. The Panasonic Lumix FX35 is a highly desirable compact camera. It's slim, light, well built, and features a decent quality 4x optically stabilised zoom lens with unusually wide angle coverage that's equivalent to 25mm. And it's really useful whether you're capturing big landscapes, big group shots, cramped interiors, or when you find yourself in situations where you literally can't step back any further. The new intelligent auto mode, enhanced from its predecessor, really does an uncannily good job at working out what kind of picture you're trying to take. And the HD movie recording facilities are also great fun, although it should be noted you can't optically zoom the lens while you're filming a video, and it's still, like most compacts, not a patch on a dedicated camcorder. In terms of other downsides, noise is an issue on this camera. Like most other compacts, if you want the best quality from the FX35, you should be using it at its lowest sensitivity of 100 ISO. And you can see some examples of this camera at other sensitivities at the Camera Labs website. It should also be pointed out that there's little or no manual control. So there's some really good points about this camera, but also some downsides that you should carefully consider if you're thinking about buying it. And of course there's some key rivals to consider too, not least Panasonic's own super zoom compact, the TZ5. So to find out how the new FX35 compares to the TZ5 and other key rivals, along with seeing sample images and current pricing for all those cameras, then head on over to our full review. You'll find it at www.cameralabs.com.